Dante's Boxing Nation, let's get into it. So James Kirkland gets a brutal TKO win over Glenn Tapia. Let's talk about it. You know, guys, when it comes to James Kirkland, I have good news and I have bad news. Let's go ahead and start with the good news. The good news is James Kirkland was victorious coming off of a 20-month layoff, knocking out or getting a TKO victory over an undefeated young 23-year-old Glenn Tapia. Glenn Tapia, by the way, was a really pretty good prospect. I have been watching a lot of his fights coming up, and you know he had a decent future. I mean, I wouldn't say he was the next Demetrius Andrade or anyone like that, but you know, he was undefeated and he was a pretty good prospect, to say the least. This victory, it basically puts James Kirkland in a position to where he is pretty much guaranteed another big network date. HBO, Showtime. Like I said, for all we know, the way this fight looked, Canelo Alvarez might pick James Kirkland to be his next opponent. So that was all the good news when it comes to James. Now let's go ahead and get into the bad news. I'm going to put it this way, guys. Just like Boys the Men said, looks like it's the end of the road when it comes to James Kirkland. Now, don't be distracted by the smokescreen of entertainment and excitement, you know, because this is what a lot of people would generally look at. But they don't look at the whole picture, you know. A casual fan, you know, if I were a casual fan and I really like James Kirkland, which I do like James Kirkland, but if I was a casual fan, I would say, oh man, did you see that performance? Oh, that was excellent. Look what James did. You know, he got hurt in the first round and he rallied back to come back and stop the guy. Man, this dude is a beast and he's going to be hard for anybody to deal with. Now, this is how a casual fan would see it, right? But I don't see it that way at all. What I seen was a fighter in James Kirkland that looks nowhere near the way he looked before he went to jail. I've been saying this for the longest. James Kirkland was he's a totally different fighter than he was before he did his little prison stint. All right? This is basically a shadow of James Kirkland. He was completely exposed in this fight, and I don't believe that James Kirkland can ever get back to that beast that James used to be when he was undefeated. I mean, you guys have to understand something. When James Kirkland was undefeated, this man was impressive. He was aggressive, but he knew how to box. He was aggressive, but he would be aggressive with head movement and defense, quick counterpunching. You know, he was always putting pressure on you, but before, he was able to do it without getting hit. Now, Kirkland is just basically walking into punches. I didn't like how he looked at all in this fight, guys. In the first round, as soon as the bell rang, Glenn Tapia, he did what he was supposed to do. He jumped right on James Kirkland, and he basically tried to test James Kirkland right off the start because he knew that James Kirkland had been knocked out by the Japanese fighter in the first round, and he was basically trying to pull something like that off in the first round in this fight. So, you know, Glenn Tapia, he looked good for like the first minute or the first round. And after that, he faded like I've seen him do in previous fights. But so back to talking about Kirkland, like I said, I didn't like the way he looked. Just walking into punches, you know, the head movement wasn't there. I mean, getting caught with shots that were just flush. All right. And if it wasn't for the type of opponent that he had tonight in the ring with him, Kirkland would have got knocked out. He would have got knocked out because Glenn Tapia, he started something that he couldn't finish, all right? But see, a more seasoned fighter, a more confident fighter, a more complete fighter, he's going to start it and he's going to finish it. This win was there for Glenn Tapia to take, but he is a fighter who, you know, it looks flashy for the first couple of rounds and then he starts to fade. And that's what we've seen, and he faded rapidly in this fight. So, like I said, man, I didn't like the way James Kirkland looked. It looks like it's all downhill from this point on. I would not be surprised if Canelo Alvarez, they decide to most likely skip a more dangerous fight against Erislandy Lara and try to still pull James Kirkland in the ring and knock him out, because Canelo Alvarez will definitely knock out James Kirkland. But hypothetically, if that fight were to happen, if Canelo couldn't get Kirkland out of there early, I could see Kirkland giving Canelo a few problems throughout the fight. Maybe just exposing Canelo a little bit, but as soon as James Kirkland gets caught solid, I could see him going to sleep in that fight. So anyway, this is basically how I seen this fight. It's all downhill as far as I'm concerned when it comes to James Kirkland. They're going to have to match him very carefully, and I doubt that they're going to match him very carefully, because most likely he's going to be brought in as an opponent for younger fighters coming up. So that's how I see it, guys. I'm on to the next one.